So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending upon when you're viewing this. But I wanted to start off with something we are very comfortable with, and that is personalized or blended learning. Maybe some of us are calling it supplemental or digital learning. But the essence, as we get started today, is to focus on the fact that there's a lot of different models, and we're using it in lots of different ways. Now, some of us may see ourselves in what we do instructionally within the rotation model. Others of us may see ourselves within self-blended model or the enriched virtual model. Or maybe you're saying, well, gosh, Sean, there's a 5 or 6 going on. But the focus here is the fact that, yes, we're doing blended learning, and there's a lot of different ways of doing blended learning. Now, as we look at blended learning, of course, we look at the learner, and we look at the resources and the ways that we provide supports to these individuals. And we realize we're doing that in a variety of different ways. We may use blogs and wikis and discussion forums. We may use chat functions. In the e-learning element, we may offer a presentation like I'm giving you today. We may offer digital text, digital workbooks, digital poems, digital essays, digital readings that are embedded into digital lessons. We may do synchronous or asynchronous using video conferencing. There's always an element with blended learning, almost always an element of blended learning, where we're involved face-to-face with the individual. Maybe we're facilitating what's happening virtually. Maybe we're facilitating face-to-face in terms of small group, large group. Maybe we're doing it individually as well, depending upon the learner. And of course, we're using video and other types of media. And finally, our assessments could be everything from what's built in to quizzes, progress monitoring, writings, could be a variety of different multiple means of representations where we're allowing individuals to present. But the gist is, within blended learning and personalized learning, there's a variety of things happening. Here's a brief video to me that kind of conceptualizes the basic elements of why we think about and why we're looking at blended learning. Let's just take a listen.
I'm on my computer a lot.
Email,
Google Docs,
Google Search.
Snapchat.
Technology has revolutionized our world. We can connect and learn and create and share. We have immediate, improved, and personalized access to the world. Nothing in our modern lives remains untouched by this powerful transformation, except for education. The big idea behind blended learning is combining online learning in brick-and-mortar schools with teachers where students can learn at their own pace so that they can optimize their individual learning.
Combining the best of teacher instruction and computer-based instruction.
The world that we live in today isn't about paper and pencil, it's about computers. Having our kids become comfortable and familiar with that now is going to better prepare them for the world when they leave this school.
Blended learning can actually personalize for every student's individual needs to meet them where they are when they need it.
We are doing students and ourselves a great disservice to assume they all learn in the same way, so we need something new, and that's blended learning.
When you walk into a blended learning school, what you will see is small groups of students off with their computers working away on online learning programs, and another group of students in small groups doing rich interactive projects with each other and really collaborating as peers.
I'm able to now focus on smaller groups of kids, give them more individual attention, and help them with their individual learning styles.
They're not just stuck with a teacher in front of them, lecturing for hours. They get to move around in different clusters or learning by themselves.
Before, you're moving at the pace of the average of your 30 kids. Now you can really move at the pace of each individual student.
One of my problems is that I'll get bored because I'll be explaining something over and over again, and this gives me a way to continue to move forward.
I'm sold. I'm not sure about you, but I'm sold. Personalized learning, my goodness, it offers multiple options. It gives us different ways in terms of getting it to different levels. There's different pathways. There's different pacing. I'm also allowed as an individual to have access to that data, maybe as an individual student, but also as a teacher. There's so many good things about personalized learning. And yet there's some cautions, some considerations. There's lots of different ways, as we mentioned, to do personalized learning for us to consider that. You know, I think of my own children. I have 3 high schoolers. One of them, in terms of personalized learning or blended learning, she goes into the physics classroom, sits down, signs in, completes a series of lessons, reviews some PowerPoint presentations, completes some assessments, makes sure she's completed things based on a checklist, and she's going. I have another young man, sophomore, with intellectual disabilities. He gets into blended learning where he's using Quizlet, BrainPop, and a variety of other vendor-based machines. And another that's doing some math instruction where he's seen presentations via Blackboard in a learning management system. He's getting additional tutorial support. So there's a variety of ways of doing blended learning. some tools that we often use. And oftentimes we are using, as a reminder, we are using products that we necessarily haven't developed. So we may be using BrainPop. We may be using Edutopia. We may be using other types of resources that are supplemental to us as teachers, but also to our students. Digital books, digital lessons, apps, a number of other things that we're using for these materials. And again, some that we create, oftentimes hosting, let's say, in a Blackboard site or another learning management site, but also then using things that have been developed for us, and then we integrate those in. So our version of personalized learning, our version of blended learning varies. And of course, I know that I'm reinforcing this to you, and I know I'm in a way kind of preaching to the choir on that. So where are you going, Sean? Where are you going? One of these pathways, we know that this perception is that it's individualized. The perception is that it's very unique. The perception is that potentially it's more specialized than what we do in our face-to-face traditional instruction that may have some technology supports. Maybe we're doing one-to-one and we don't think of it as blended learning. Or maybe we've used computers over the years for writing supports or things of that nature. Or maybe we've used some sort of digital apps over the last several years, with the apps being with us now for the last 7 years. But now we're going into more of a personalized learning, more of a blended learning, where again, the perception is that they're getting access to materials in a manner that's very appropriate for their learning needs. And then, of course, that comes into consideration when it comes to data. This perception that, oh gosh, we're getting rich data that really is allowing us to alter the instruction and stay on top of the individuals. And when I think of data for the future, I tend to think of this video. So we'll go sideways for just a moment. But the point of this video is this idea that we have so much data available to us. And then what are we going to do and what can we do with that data, to me, is the question. But again, this is an aspect of blended learning. Let's just take a look at this.
Pizza Palace, guaranteed hot in 30 minutes or it's free. This is Mary. May I take your order?
Hi, Mary. Yes, I'd like to order.
Is this Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Thank you for calling again, sir. I share your national identification number as 610-204-9998-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply. That's at 175 Lincoln Avenue, yes?
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this stuff?
We just got wired into the system, sir.
Oh, well, I'd like to order a couple of your double meat special pizzas.
Sure thing. There'll be a new $20 charge for those, sir.
What do you mean?
Sir, the system shows me that your medical records indicate that you have high blood pressure and extremely high cholesterol. Luckily, we have a new agreement with your national healthcare provider that allows us to sell you double meat pies as long as you agree to waive all future claims of liability.
What?
Do you agree, sir? You can sign the form when we deliver, but there is a charge for processing. The total is $67 even.
$67?
Well, that includes the delivery surcharge of $15 to cover the added risk to our driver of traveling through an orange zone.
I live in an orange zone?
Now you do. Looks like there was another robbery on Montrose yesterday. You could save $48 if you ordered our special Sprout Submarine Combo and picked it up yourself. Comes with tofu sticks. Those are very tasty, sir. Good value, too.
But I want double meat.
Well, I'm sure you can afford the $67 then. You just bought those tickets to Hawaii. They weren't cheap, eh? Oh, but I see you checked out the budget beach bum at the library last week. Up to you, sir.
All right. I'll get the Sprout subs.
Good choice, sir. Gotta watch that waist if you're hitting the beach, eh? 42 inches. Wow. Man, I'd say tofu and sprouts is like required.
That's how much?
Just between you and me, there's a $3 off coupon in this month's Total Men's Fitness magazine. Your wife Betty subscribes to that, right? Anyhow, clip that and it's $19.99 even. Whoa, looks like you maxed out on all your credit cards. Bring cash, okay?
Want to stop this from happening?
All right, so a little humor. At least I hope you saw that as humorous. But again, another aspect of blended learning is we have lots of data. And the perception is with that data, we'll be able to make the appropriate choices and based on the actual factual evidence that we have to make a decision, okay, this is most appropriate for the next lesson, for the next supplement, for the next resource. And as many of us know, depending upon the learning management system we're using, like the Florida Virtual School, they have elements that when we finish a lesson, data is provided and then directs us to that next lesson. All right, so the personalized learning system is very adaptable. It's very flexible. And again, it features lots of different materials. And a lot of those materials are at the hub of the personalized learning experience. And I want to reinforce that. And I know we know this, but oftentimes when we think of that personalized or blended learning experience, and I've been using those terms synonymously, but oftentimes it starts with some sort of digital experience. So it may be a digital lesson we created with a learning management system off of Blackboard. So it's going to have text, it's going to have some PowerPoints, it's going to have some audio files, it may have some videos that we grabbed, maybe some videos that we actually created ourselves. Or we're going to get them into a vendor-based learning element. So that would be more of a content management system. It could be Study Island, it could be K-12 Incorporated, it could be the Florida Virtual, it could be a number of different types of elements where these individuals would then, student-wise, first get at access to this material, well, the appropriate material, or be starting learning from this material from those lessons. Now, what does that mean? Okay, of course, as I mentioned, Khan Academy, there's another one I didn't mention, and Gizmos and others. But what does that mean? Well, as we get started here, one of the things I think we need to appreciate is that there are barriers. And there's barriers when it comes to any type of learning. There are barriers, potentially. But there are barriers when it comes to that blended learning option particularly. Now, in my world, as a special educator, oftentimes people will say, well, the barriers reside in the student. And they'll mean, and that's not a negative per se, they'll say that these individuals will have a number of different challenges when it comes to these barriers. Now, the barriers oftentimes will look at everything from, well, the reading below grade level, and I'm using a resource that expects a certain level of grade reading. You know, I'm not a reading teacher per se as a 7th grade science teacher, but I do require them to read in order to get background knowledge. Or that online lesson or that digital book that requires some sort of reading. We also see barriers with that, well, they have poor attention or poor organization, or they can't convey what they know or what we think they know in writing, or they have difficulty with the handwriting or their fine motor issues or math or processing limitations, and the list goes on. But oftentimes we'll bring it back to the learner. And so, one, we'll try to plan for that, or two, we try to address that within the learner, not realizing there's other barriers. So, for example, there are also barriers in the curriculum, in the learning that we provide. And so, for example, take a look at this image. Now, think of this image as a resource that we asked individuals to take a look at through an online lesson this morning. Or maybe last night, we were doing a little flipped classroom, and we're asking them to take a look at some digital materials last night, and they're coming into a face-to-face activity where we're going to do a number of different things, very interactive. If our administrators came in and observed us, they'd say, oh my gosh, Sean, you're so on top of things. Small group, large group, individualized group, you're addressing learning styles, etc. You're differentiating your instruction. But it all begins with the understanding of a content that we assigned the night before. And so this is where the content or the curriculum becomes a barrier. Now, you've been looking at this for a little while. I've been rambling on. It's an image that many of you already know. It's actually an image that many of you have seen. As a clue, you've probably seen along the roadside if you're driving out into the country. And as you look at that, the idea here is that, see, I'm assuming you know what it is. So I'm therefore going to start instruction based on the fact that you know what it is, I know what it is, let's move on. But some of you have been staring at it going, Sean, I don't know what it is. And so, therefore, as I go into that face-to-face, very interactive lesson, based on the fact that you knew what the content was the night before, with that assumption, I'm really getting difficulty with myself and for you with that assumption because you don't know what it is. You don't have the background because you weren't able to read the material. You didn't have the fluency with the material. You weren't able to break down the difficult vocabulary. You weren't able to comprehend at the level I expected you to do. Well, it's a barrier then in that curriculum, the material we're using. So we'll need to adapt for that. We'll need to plan for that. We'll need to redesign for that. Now, Sean, you're like, what is it? What is it? What is it? It's a cow. And you're like, I don't see the cow, Sean. I don't see it. Well, there it is. There it is. There you go. Okay. So it's a cow. And the whole idea of the cow is the fact that, the whole idea of the cow to me is the fact that it is an individual that we have material-wise, that we need to address the material and we need to kind of consider that. So what are the implications for blended learning? Well, for me, the implications for blended learning, when we think of these barriers and we think of the way blended learning is often delivered, we think of the digital materials we provide, the videos we provide, the audio resources we provide, the lessons we provide, the activities we provide, how we host it in the learning management system. There's a variety of different things that potentially could challenge us. And so for us today, I think we need to think about what are the implications for blended learning. And so our next step is to head back to the lesson. Head back to Activity 1. And Activity 1 will guide you through a series of questions that I want you to reflect on the current materials you're using, either materials you developed or found or identified and you put into a learning management system like Blackboard, or something that you're using within that content management system like Florida Virtual Reality, Virtual School, or other resources you're using. I want you to think about that. And of course, go back to our lesson in Blackboard labeled Activity 1 for further details.